Peace and love. My name is Ram Hotep, broadcasting on behalf of 13 signs astrology.com. That's the number 13, signs plural, astrology.com. I'm doing this video pertaining to our highest ancestor, or one of our highest ancestors, in the name of Saturn. Now, I say our highest ancestor because we all came from the stars. We all come from the universe. We all come from space. Saturn was revered by the ancients as the foremost planet, or the farthest planet from the planet Earth. Saturn is the furthest planet that you can view without a telescope. And this is why the ancients revered Saturn as the furthest planet. Now, the ancients knew about Uranus, Neptune, and the other planets, but we didn't acknowledge, or they didn't acknowledge, those planets as personal planets. And the reason for this is because you cannot view those planets without the help of a telescope or some form of technology or equipment, advanced equipment. You cannot view these planets with the naked eye. So this is why Saturn was revered as the foremost, or the farthest planet, the most high planet. Saturn is referred to as Father Time. When you hear the concept of Father Time, you are hearing, and you're hearing about Saturn, and they're referring to Saturn. Saturn is Father Time because Saturn takes the longest to revolve around the sun, according to the personal planets. I'm not speaking of Uranus. I'm not speaking of Pluto. I'm not speaking of Chiron. I'm not speaking of Neptune. So when we talk about the personal planets, which are 7 planets, Saturn is the furthest planet. Now, Saturday was named after the planet Saturn. And this is why Saturday, to this day, is revered as the Sabbath, because the term Sabbath actually goes back to Saturn. And the ancient Babylonians, who got their information from the ancient Sumerians, revered Saturday as the day of rest, as the day of rest, because this is the day that the Anunnaki, or the higher beings, rested from the labors of creating man. And this day was reserved for man to honor the Anunnaki and the higher beings. So it was about honoring the Anunnaki and the higher beings. And this is why Saturn was revered and was reserved, Saturday was reserved as a day of rest. And this is where you get the Sabbath from. Now, the Sabbath actually starts Friday evening to us. It starts because actually days, the new day, according to the ancients, doesn't start at sunrise or at midnight, actually, because we believe the new day starts at midnight in the dead of the night. No, the new day starts when the sun sets. When the sun sets, that's the ending of a day. And when shadow hour comes or nightfall comes, this is the beginning of a day. So Saturday is actually Friday evening. Saturday is Friday evening. So I just wanted to kind of throw that in there just to let people know, as far as when you do your Sabbath, and when you, those of you that honor the Sabbath and things of that nature, you honor this day on the sunset at Friday evening. And it ends on sunset Saturday evening. That's when the Sabbath ends. Now, the Christians honor their Sabbath on Sunday because they deal with another planet, which is the sun. And I'm not covering that in this video, but the Christians deal with the sun, and this is why they acknowledge their Sabbath on the Sunday, because Christianity is actually sun worship. The story of Jesus is the story of the sun. And the Hebrews, they dealt with Saturn, the highest being, our elder. And rightfully so, because according to astrological doctrine, Saturn has 7 rings around it. And this is why the 7th day was revered as Saturn, because of the 7 rings. So this is another esoteric meaning and hidden meaning behind Saturn. Now, personally, Saturn is very important because Saturn deals with, in a personal chart, speaking of a personal chart now, Saturn deals with the Saturn return. And the Saturn return is very important for an individual, like for you. The Saturn return is approximately when you turn 28 and a half years old or 29 years old, you begin your Saturn return. And in your Saturn return, this is the time when you come back full swing as to where you started when you were born. This is the time when all of your karma is returned back to you. Saturn deals with the planet of karma. Saturn is the planet of karma. So when we deal with Saturn, we're dealing with karma. Another name for Saturn, when you look it up in the etymology, and you go to the etymology of the term Saturn, you actually get, it means to sow. It means to sow. This is the etymology of the term Saturn, or the word Saturn. It means to sow. Like you reap what you sow. So Saturn is a planet of sowing. It's a seed planting planet, meaning that it's a planet of structure, meaning that you put out your intentions under the planet Saturn, and when it comes back around, you get that back. You get that back. You get your intentions back, predicated upon what you put out, because you get what you put out according to universal law. So Saturn is a very important planet. When we deal with the ownership of Saturn and when we deal with the astrological meanings of Saturn. Now, Saturn is the planet of structure. It's the planet of structure. Many of us do not like structure. We run from structure, especially those of us, and this, I'm speaking to myself on this as well, especially those of us that have a lot of Neptune in our chart, and those of us that have a lot of Uranus in our chart. We want freedom. We don't like structure. We don't want to save money. You know, like, we don't want to put in the work. We want things to just come to us. We want to just expand. We want to deal with Jupiter. Jupiter is the planet of expansion. So we want to just expand and just spread our wings. We don't want to put in that work. And Saturn teaches us a lesson of karma. And the term karma is your making. It's what you make. So you reap what you sow. What you do with your hands, it will come back to you. And this is what Saturn deals with. It deals with the making. It deals with construction, structure. This is what Saturn means. So in the Saturn return, after you turn 29, you go through a period of, you begin to see the things that you've done prior to 29 come back at you. And this is why many people, after their Saturn return, they can't seem to get it together. They can't seem to get it right. They can't seem to just find their way anymore, and they lose their footing after Saturn return. Many people burn out after Saturn return. Many people transform, or what you would call die, after Saturn return. There is no death, so I call it transformation. There is no death. You transform to another realm. But many people transform after Saturn return. In the music industry, they talk about, and I spoke of this on several different occasions, but they speak about the 27 Club. Because many people, when they do their rituals, they are sacrificed right before their Saturn return. And this is what they call the 27 Club. Now, they got this sacrificial experience from the ancients, because many ancients would sacrifice a individual prior to their Saturn return, depending on if the gods asked that shaman at the time for a sacrifice. They would choose one from the tribe that was supposed to be sacrificed, and they would be sacrificed at 27. And this is where you get the 27 Club from. It's all based on Saturn. We're still dealing with Saturn here. So Saturn is a very important planet. Very important planet. Now, many people, they don't get it right after Saturn, and you have a few years to get it right after Saturn. And this is when you get to the age of 33. When you get to the age of 33, this is another age that the ancients chose to sacrifice individuals. And I'm not saying whether this is right or wrong. This is the ancient practice that many of the ancient tribes, such as the Mayans and other ancient doctrines, the Aztecs and other ancient cultures that dealt with sacrifice, they dealt with this doctrine or whatever, and it was predicated upon the gods or the universe or the planets. And it's dealing with Saturn. This is where they got it from. It's dealing with Saturn. So, but in our modern time, as far as on a mundane level, Saturn return is a time where you are to reanalyze your life. It's a time to look back on your life and to reflect on the things that happened prior to you turning 29. And it's a time to basically balance the scales. It's a time to balance the scales in your life. This is why Saturn is very important. Saturn rules the planet of Capricorn. And Capricorn is all about structure. Capricorn is all about big business. See, this is Capricorn. So, I mean, and Saturn rules that, it rules that, not planet, but it rules that constellation. The planet of Saturn rules the constellation of Capricorn. So Saturn return is a very key time. For those of you that are about to go through Saturn return, or those of you who have just went through Saturn return and you are having trouble getting your footing, or you want to know what's going to happen to you in Saturn return, because you're about to go through Saturn return, you're at that 26, 27, maybe even 25 age, you're getting ready to go through Saturn return in a few years, you might want to get a natal reading done by an astrologer. And I'm not saying you have to come to me. You can come to any astrologer that's going to help you out with your natal chart, but make sure it's thorough and make sure they do it right, and make sure they're dealing with that 13th sign, because it's all about that 13th sign. You see, so many astrologers have not begun to acknowledge the 13th sign, so their charts are off. You need to find out where your Saturn is in your chart, because when you find out where your Saturn is, this is your karma. This is where a part of your life purpose, a part of your life work, a part of the reason why you came back. This is the planet that you must honor if your chart is to go right. Saturn is the most important planet. It's the most important planet because you have to honor Saturn. You have to honor Saturn. It's the planet of form and structure. And when we are incarnated here in this flesh, we have to honor Saturn, because we are incarnated in form. We are incarnated in structure. And this is what Saturn deals with. Saturn, say for instance, if your Saturn was in Virgo, this means that your karma is dealing with health, your diet. Many of us that were born, now Saturn stays in the constellation for about 2.5 years. So many of us that were born in the early 80s have Saturn in Virgo. Late 70s, early 80s have Saturn in Virgo. So if you have Saturn in Virgo, that means your karma is about dealing with your diet, dealing with service, being a servant, dealing with the feminine principle, helping people, dealing with regulating your food intake, dealing with eating the proper foods, the clean foods. So this is Saturn in Virgo. Now, people that were born a little bit before that, like around 76 to 78, 1976 to 78, if you're watching this video, you probably have Saturn in Leo. You have Saturn in Leo, and this is dealing with the ego, the self. I mean, you have to regulate and control the self, the ego. You can't let your ego take advantage of you. You see, you have to regulate that. Saturn deals with regulation, structure, karma, your making. So Saturn is a planet that must be honored if you are to enjoy this life and to have prosperity in this life. Now, when we deal with, and this is the last point, when we deal with the order that the planets are in, this is very important. The ancients put the planets in a certain order. And I go into this when you get a natal reading. But Saturn is the 7th planet. And then after Saturn comes Uranus. But you see, Uranus deals with freedom. So many of your Aquariuses, they're ruled by Uranus. So they want to be free and they want to, do all of this stuff. But they're also ruled by Saturn too, because Saturn actually co-rules Uranus as well. And you can't get to freedom until you first master structure. Can't get to freedom until you first master structure. So you have to have that structure. Got to have that structure before you become free. Many of us want to be free from our jobs. We want to be free to do the things that we want to do. We want to be free from the daily routines of life. And you can be free from this, but you have to honor Saturn. Honor your ancestors so that your days will be long upon the earth land, which the Most High has given unto thee and endowed unto thee. And this is what Saturn deals with. Deals with structure. So I hope that helps as far as giving out information on the Saturn return. If you are interested in getting a natal reading, feel free to visit my website. It's 13signsastrology.com. That's the number 13, signs plural, astrology.com. Until we meet again, I'm going to leave you with peace and paradise.